There's now a way to contact the Wolf Connection podcast. Send us an email to podcast@wolfconnection.org with your comments, questions, and guest ideas for Stephen and myself. You may hear your question answered on an upcoming podcast. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Calfa. Let's talk about some wolves. So one of the individuals that we met in Yellowstone messaged me the other day and said we should absolutely positively contact this photographer. And her name is Julie Argyle. She has been in photography and had a camera in her hand since she was 8 years old. That's when she first visited Yellowstone. And she joins Stephen and I today from Hooper, Utah. Julie, it is a pleasure to meet you finally. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm hanging in there. I'm sitting at home. I've been editing pictures from the summer. I lived in the park all summer, which was pretty cool. It was a great opportunity for me to do what I love. Only had to work a couple days a week. And so now I'm editing all the incredible pictures I got to take.
Yeah, I said before we started that I perused around your Instagram and your photos are incredible. And trust me, everyone will plug her Instagram and her photography business as well. She's got some beautiful shots, not only of wolves, but bears and fox and all sorts of incredible animals. So we're gonna do a deep dive on that today. Steven's got it up right now. So if he sees something, he might just jump in and ask. But how did you, what was the at 8 years old, what's the inclination for you to say, I want to photograph? And was it wildlife at first, or was it just anything and everything?
Well, I grew up in a family who was a hunting family. My dad worked for the railroad, and so he didn't get paid a lot of money. And so for us growing up, as a means to put meat on the table and have, food, my dad hunted, and everything that he hunted, we would eat. And so my love for the outdoors started when I was very young, going with, him and my mom and out doing that kind of stuff. And at some point in time, it hit me, and I couldn't take watching an animal get killed anymore. It was one of those things where I just wanted to take pictures of them. I'll never forget, I was out bow hunting actually with my dad, and it's probably the last time I ever went hunting with him. And we were watching this big mule deer buck in this meadow. And we sat there and watched it for probably 20 minutes. And my dad was like, okay, I need to take a shot now. He's probably going to leave. He was hunting with a bow and arrow. And he pulled back on his bow. And right when he went to let go of the arrow, I yelled and said, no, Dad, don't do it. And he kind of turned and looked at me, and he said, he says, I think I probably created a monster, but in a good way, not in a bad way. But, it was one of those things where that moment in time changed something in me, where I wanted to see them for the beauty that they are and take pictures. And my heart just got attached to animals at that point in time at a very young age.
Wow. What was that relationship like? Because you touched on it briefly, but how was that growing up? What did your father hunt? What was the sustainable things that he was hunting to bring home to you guys? Was it mostly deer, elk? What was the hunting that he did?
Yeah, mostly deer and pheasant. We ate a lot of pheasant growing up. Bird hunting, not a lot of ducks. I mean, ducks don't taste very good. they taste like what they eat, mud. They're in the mud a lot there, whatever. But yeah, so it was mostly deer, and deer's not the best thing to eat. He didn't ever kill any elk. He didn't, it wasn't his thing to go after a big elk or anything like that. Like I said, it was a lot to do with providing food for us as a family. And so it's kind of funny, because him doing that and then me doing what I started doing changed him, as he would go out and go to hunt. And he got to the point where he didn't even want to kill animals anymore. And so he quit hunting, a long time before. He just passed away a few months ago, but a long time before that, he, quit, just because my passion turned into his passion. And it said a lot about my dad and that kind of stuff. We fished a lot. I love fish. It's my favorite food. So, that kind of stuff. But, he inspired me to love the outdoors. And then my passion for watching animals in the outdoors and having them alive and seeing them just what they do changed him, in the end. So it was a great relationship for us. It was good.
Wow, that's a beautiful. My condolences first off for your loss for your dad, but
Thank
it's just
you.
such a beautiful thing, of course, and it's just beautiful to hear how that all worked out in a way that you guys really you helped each other, which was beautiful. I find that incredible. We hear a lot of those stories about people who hunted more for sustainability, for putting food on the table, literally putting food on the table, and doing that, and then something changes in them where they go to a different path.
Right.
What is so? What's your approach, even at that young age, and as you grew up? What was your approach then? Because you wanted to see the animals in their natural habitat, you wanted to just watch them and take the pictures. So how did you start to approach when you were going out at that young of an age to find the shots you were looking for, or the process of saying, I'm going to go out and look for this specific animal? Or was it just, I'm taking my camera to see what I can gather?
I had my camera with me no matter where I went. And, at that young age, I would travel to Yellowstone with my parents. We would go for, a couple weeks in the spring and then a couple weeks in the fall. And I always had my camera with me. And back then, like grizzly bears, there wasn't a lot of grizzly bears around at that time. If you got to see one on a trip, you were incredibly lucky. And as the years went by, you get to see a few more. But I always made sure I had my camera no matter where I went, because Yellowstone, it's the luck of the draw. Every corner there's something different and you never know what you're going to see. And if you don't have that camera with you, then you're going to, miss it all. But on that same note, there's times where I will be watching something and, wolves in particular, wild horses. And I say wolves and wild horses because they're like wild horses have bands, wolves have
Mhm.
packs, but we as humans can learn so much from those animals because of their interactions within each other, and they're a family. They take care of each other, they watch out for each other. So I find myself putting the camera down now at the age that I am, just so I can watch them without looking through the camera, because it's important. You have to learn and you have to know about them. And if you don't know about their interactions and what they're truly about, you can't educate people. And education is a huge thing for me. So yeah.
Where else do you like taking photos other than, I mean, Yellowstone's obviously got to be top of most wildlife photographers list, but where else are some places that you enjoy going out into the woods and looking for critters?
I here in Utah, looking for critters is tough because they're scared of you. So, I drive up, I can drive up on Monte Cristo, and that's up in the Wasatch Range up here. And see a moose or something, and they're far away and they don't mind you, the moose, especially this time of year, they're kind of, just lounging around doing nothing. But deer, anything like that, they're scared of you. So there's not a lot of places around here. There's one particular place that you can go to see some really incredible mule deer, and that's Antelope Island. And so I go out there a lot and shoot them with my camera out there, because I don't know if you've ever seen pictures from out there. There's a few of those on my sites, but they have some incredible bucks.
Yeah, that place is
So
cool.
yeah, so I try and hike every single day, whether it's at home or, some days I just walk around my neighborhood, but I go out to the island when I'm home from Yellowstone every day. But so mostly for me, it's the Grand Teton, that greater Yellowstone ecosystem, Island Park, those kind of areas where I go to see animals. So
So what was that first trip like for you in Yellowstone? What were the emotions and the things that were going through your mind when you went there the first time?
I I honestly cannot remember the first trip I ever took to Yellowstone because I was so young. It's one of those things where it was so long ago, I don't know. I remember going and being like in Hayden Valley, and there's a big curve. It's between the new Weasel Pullout is what we call it, that area, and a grizzly bear was coming down and swimming across the river. And I my mom and dad pulled over and I jumped out of the vehicle and I had my camera with me, and I was thinking, I had this big lens at the time, and it's probably like 100 millimeter or something, nothing fancy, and wanted to go get a picture of this grizzly bear. And I jumped out and I'm going down the side just a little bit. And at that time, it's just like today, there's 100 cars pulled over watching this one grizzly bear swim the river. And my mom's yelling at me, Julie, get back here. You don't need to get any closer. And so then now I look at that picture, and in that particular picture, that grizzly bear is the smallest dot you could ever see. You don't even know it's a grizzly bear. I was so far away from it. So for me, I just have to laugh, because here's my mom all paranoid about the situation, and I just am hoping to get a picture. And so, it's memories like that that make me laugh, because now I'm like, yeah, we see him, on the side of the road now, and that thing was so far away, and my mom was just freaking out thinking I was going to walk right up to it. But it's those kind of memories that make me laugh. Those are the things that I remember from visiting, Yellowstone at a young age. Across from the fishing bridge stores where the fishing bridge campground used to be. And growing up, that was like a scary place to be. Every little noise that you heard, you thought it was a grizzly bear, because they ended up closing that campground because it's the right of way for the grizzly bears to the water. And so back then they had a bear that knew how to get in the garbage can and could actually pull it open with his claws and then put his other arm down in and get garbage out. So, I mean, the memories from growing up are incredible, but like I said, I can't remember my first visit. I have a lot of first things when I saw them first, but not the first visit. I don't honestly know.
What are some ways you can touch on ethics in the context of being a wildlife photographer?
It's a really, really touchy subject. And I understand that things happen in Yellowstone, all the time, where you'll be driving down the road, you'll have something cross in front of you, you pull over, you want to get a picture, by the time you get out or want to get back in your vehicle, because maybe you realize you're too close or whatever, you're boxed in, there's 100 cars around you. So I understand that situations happen that are out of our control, and you might end up being closer to an animal than you should be, but you have to be mindful, especially nowadays, because there's so many people out there wanting to see these animals, and they're the ones who are going to pass on the information to everyone else and about what's happening and that kind of stuff. And so if you don't remind yourself and keep yourself in check, then it could have a downfall, especially for those of us that are in the park all the time. We know you shouldn't be closer than 100 yards. It happens. Like I said, I like to hike a lot. It's kind of funny because people would think me hiking would see animals in the backcountry all the time. Honestly, I have been hiking and seen wolves on the same trail as me twice. And that's hiking every single day. Like this summer, I probably hiked, I couldn't even tell you how many times, 300 times, because I'd go out in the morning and the afternoon. Bears, I've came across 3 grizzly bears, that were probably closer than 100 yards, but you just have to be big, and you have to, make sure and be mindful of yourself. That's the most important thing. Rules do get broken. We try not to break them. We do our best to follow them, not approach animals. Anytime you change the behavior of an animal, that's when you have to look at yourself and say, okay, I'm doing something wrong. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, we spoke with Kate Oxman a while back before we actually went to Yellowstone, and it's the same. She touched on a lot of those points too, and I feel like you have that same awareness, is that you individuals such as yourselves who have been photographing for quite some time really have to be the ones that show everyone else, the general public, how to act and react when these animals are close or even when they're far away. And Taylor Bland and a lot of the other biologists that work inside the park say the same thing. And it's really about finding that awareness and understanding what's best for the animals and the species that are there, as opposed to, as you say, getting that memory on a camera or on a phone.
It is, for sure. Their safety is, the animal safety and what happens to them is my number one priority. I've had situations many of them arise like this past summer where I stop traffic. Like if an animal is trying to get across the road, I will literally ask people, whoever's coming, please stop. Just don't go any closer. This animal's trying to cross the road. Please just let them get on their way. You'll have an opportunity to photograph them once they're across the road. Their safety is the number one priority. It's not about getting a picture. It's not about anything like that. For me, it's the animal's life, and we're in their home. I'm sure you've heard that said many times, but it's so important to acknowledge that and really realize the effect that we're having on those animals. And as far as, humanizing them, I don't know if that's what you want to call it, or, just getting them used to people. It's a big issue, especially once they cross that imaginary line. They don't know the difference of someone who's going to hurt them and someone who's not going to hurt them. They think that everybody's kind and that they're okay to do a certain thing, and then they're not. So it's really important to realize that it's not about the picture. It's not about, I don't know, you just have to learn from everything that you do and set a good example. You're right.
Mhm.
Every one of us that are there on a continual basis. And that's why, spotting scopes are so important, and to share a spotting scope with a group of people and let them see an animal that they haven't seen before or something like that at that distance. Wolves in particular, people come to Yellowstone to see wolves. That is the number one draw for anyone right now, is to see wolves. If they can see a wolf through a spotting scope, it is the highlight probably of their year, maybe 5 years, anything like that. Wolves do something magical to people. They're just incredible. So sharing a scope, it's important. Kids, educating kids for them to see something through a spotting scope, it's incredible. It's just an incredible experience. Over the summer, I had an opportunity. I was in Hayden Valley watching the Wapiti Lake pack, and I had the opportunity, and I didn't know at the time. It was a gentleman and his wife walked up and asked me what I was looking at, and I told them, I had wolves far out on this hill. I said, and if you stand here long enough, I said, I'm happy to share my scope, whatever. I said, but there's puppies out there, and you might get a chance to see the puppies if they decide to come out, whatever. And this guy said, well, don't you want to look through your scope? And I said, no. I said, I look through the scope every day. I see these animals all the time. I want you to be able to see them. So he was watching, and I had my binoculars up, and so he's watching through the scope, and I'm telling him, oh, the puppies are coming out. They're coming up the hill, the little opening, and I'm trying to explain to him, and he got to watch him. He was very excited about it. And I ran back down to the truck for a second, and while I was getting in the front seat of the truck, just opened the door getting in, and he came up and tapped me on the back. And I turned around, and sorry, this is going to make me emotional. He was standing there with tears running down his cheeks, and he said, I just want to thank you because you gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. He said, I came to Yellowstone to see wolves, and not only did I see them as adults, but I got to see those puppies running around. He said, I only have a few months to live. I'm dying of cancer, and I want to thank you for making this dream of mine come true. So after that, I actually had that happen 2 other times where people told me that they only had a few months to live. So to be able to share things like that with people, it's an incredible opportunity. It's, I don't know, I can't even explain it. It's just magical. People are amazing and animals are amazing. And if you can bring those two worlds together, it's pretty special. Anyway.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. Yeah, it's true. Even John and I, we get to spend a lot of times with the wolves at Wolf Connection, and still when we went to Yellowstone and people were just ready to help us out because we were trying to. We see wolves, but we don't use scopes very often, so it was all kind of new to us, and people were just so ready to help us and give us their scopes and line it up for us, and they're not even getting a chance to look through it. They just want us to be able to see what they see all the time and experience what they experience all the time. And it was like seeing wolves for the first time, even though, of course, it wasn't for us, but it really was like that. Yeah, I don't know if John, you want to touch on that because that was pretty powerful.
100%, Julie, because Stephen touched on it just now. that whole community there, which you are a part of, is incredibly engaging and incredibly helpful to people who have not been there before. And we found ourselves doing a lot of those same actions where we stopped. We actually were lucky enough to see a pack take down a bull elk, and you have people coming up on the side of the road and wondering, what are you looking at? What are you seeing? And it's almost trying to figure out who's going to give up their scope first, to be like, no, look through I have it this angle, or I have it on this angle. And it's just a beautiful expression of how we as humans, when we find, as you said, you bridge these two worlds between animals and humans, that it really touches our souls in a way that I don't know that many other things can. And, to your point, it's just, it really is an amazing encounter, an amazing thing to see. And I mean, those things that we saw in April are going to live with, they're going to live with me forever. And just the things that you're able to help people with, I'm sure are going to stick with those families and those couples for such a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Life-changing moments.
I mean, you've been going to Yellowstone your whole life. How is Yellowstone changing over time?
It's really interesting. Not just the park itself, but just like names of places, just to throw one out there, like, Buffalo Ford is now called Nez Pierce, that kind of stuff. So there's always simple things like that are changing. But the park itself, it's amazing that you can have millions of visitors come to that park every year. And it seems that they're always just out to see the beauty of it. They're always out to see the animals. As far as it changing, it's kind of sad in a way, because people don't respect the park as they used to. There's a lot more garbage. I mean, I spent days, my young daughter, she's 10, she came up and stayed in Yellowstone with me. She's been born and raised there, her whole life. And so she came and stayed with me for the summer, and her and I would take days and go out and pick up the garbage, and I mean, bags full of garbage. And so when you say how is the park changing, I think that the effects of that kind of stuff is changing it and changing the animals a little bit in their behavior. We had an incident where my daughter dropped her water bottle, and there was a coyote nearby, and it came racing at us, thinking that it was a food handout. I think that people say don't feed the animals because, the effect that it has on the animals. But on the same note, you have to take a different side of that and look at it as there's a lot of people who hike in the park. Okay. If you're feeding an animal and they get used to handouts, you have to think about those people that are actually going out on hikes, like, us in that instance. And we were close to the truck at that time, thankfully, because we were able to get back in. But you're not just changing the animals as far as food goes, but you're changing how they act around humans also. So they're always going to be looking for a handout, whether someone's out on a hike, and you could potentially put someone's life at risk if you continue to feed them and that kind of stuff. So as far as the park changing, I don't know if the park is itself changing, but the way that humans are interacting within the park has changed a lot since I've been there. I never used to see people swimming in the river, like hundreds of people in one area. And this summer, when I came, across the Firehole River, I was shocked. Things that we would never do growing up, people were doing. People were walking, going places. I was never go off trail, never this. I don't know. And overall, for the park itself changing, I mean, there's been changes, like I say, the name. I know the lake shifted at one point in time. There was pullouts where I used to fish with my dad over on the lake, and now it's covered in water. So those pullouts aren't available. But I think the park is still a great place to be. I just hope that people can learn to respect it and make sure they pick up their garbage and that kind of stuff.
And so it always seems to come back to us
Yeah.
that we always change these things, and we have to make the adjustment, and we're like you say, we're in the animals space. We're in this all these beautiful creatures space, and we unfortunately go the extra mile to sort of muck things up a little bit. I want to go back to something you had said before, and again, this was sort of a tidbit from Steve, who had mentioned, who was mentioning to bring you on. Is he said you love the Wapiti Lake Pack, and you're very involved with them, and know a lot of knowledge about them. What was it about specifically that pack that drew you to them, and you've stuck with them, I guess, for a while? Why is that? What's the draw?
The draw there is Hayden Valley. I have always stayed in the southern part. That's, to me, that's the southern part, is Hayden Valley, in that area. And that's just where we were growing up, or where I was growing up. They, the wolves were there. The Hayden Valley pack was there. The Canyon pack was there. I only saw glimpses of them when I, was younger. And I didn't have much interest in wolves. If they crossed my path, great, I saw them. I wasn't one who wanted to go out and look for them all the time. I ended up watching the Canyon pack a little bit more than anything else when they were around, and learning a little bit about wolves at that time. Hayden Valley for me is my home in the park. It's magic to me. It's, I've seen so many things there, the foggy mornings, and it's just incredible for me. I know that, other places in the park have so much to offer too, but like I say, that's my home, and that's where I want to be. So when the Wapiti Lake Pack ended up making that their home, it changed. I don't know, something. The first time I ever saw a wolf up close and personal, I had left Hayden and I went up over Dunraven and was going down to the Tower Fall area. And I had a gray cross, and I looked at my husband and I said, "Is that a coyote?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think." And then it turned and stopped and looked at us, and I'm like, "Oh no, holy crap, that's a wolf," So pulled over, and the wolf had gone up over this little hill, and I took about 30 steps up the hill, and there, about 40 yards away, was that wolf just standing there looking at me.
Wow.
And a little ways in front of it was a black one, and the black hurried on its way and kept going, but the gray just stood there looking at me. So I threw up my camera and I'm taking pictures of it. And it was one of those moments where I want to put the camera down and look at this animal. It was beautiful. And I didn't notice when I was looking through my camera. But when I put it down, that wolf was covered in mange. It had no hair on its tail. It had spots all over its body, patchy spots where it was missing hair. And it just stood there and stared at me. And at that moment, I don't know, something changed. So then when I'm over in Hayden Valley and I start seeing wolves a little bit more often and whatever, and then, 755 comes into the valley and ends up creating a pack with the Wapiti alpha female, and, having pups that first year, and only one pup ended up surviving that year, 1091. 1091 is probably the one who changed my life where wolves are concerned. I watched her on so many occasions, and her relationship with her dad, 755, was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. They would go out hunting together. They would, just watching them play together, run together through the valley. The alpha female would be back with the pups, and those two would go out. And I have never honestly seen anything like wild wolves. It's funny because, like I say, coming from a family that hunted and that kind of stuff, wolves weren't the thing to go watch. People don't like them, and they have a lot of opinions about them. And so for me to go out there and start learning about them, and I don't know, it was just such an incredible thing to know that they're so different than what they're made out to be. And people's perceptions of them are so, it's just incredible. I don't know. Wolves are so amazing. And so for the Wapiti Lake Pack to be in the place that I called home, and for me to be able to watch them and watch the interactions and learn about them, and they're truly a family, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Wolves just changed, honestly, everything for me. The Wapiti Lake Pack, just because they're in Hayden. I have a picture that it's pretty interesting. I have a picture of the Canyon Alpha female and her mate 712, and it's looking out from Grizzly Overlook. And it was a time when it was in the fall, and there was a dead bison out there, and they were sharing that bison with a bunch of grizzly bears, probably like 10 grizzly bears. I have pictures of wolves and grizzly bears in the picture, but I have this picture, and it's of her. She's up a little bit higher, and 712 is down a little bit lower. Well, fast forward 10 years, not 10, but a little while. I have the exact same picture of the Wapiti Alpha female and 755 standing down below her in the exact same place in the valley. And so for me, yeah, wolves just bring something that no other animal brings to an area. And so me being in Hayden, the Wapiti Lake Pack just changed everything for me.
And that brings up two questions for me. Whenever we have somebody who feels this strongly about wolves specifically, like not, it's not you obviously love all the animals you're shooting, but wolves specifically have changed you in such a deep way. And it begs the question, how do you feel that so many, obviously there's so many folks who feel that way as well. But how do you feel that so many folks come to the opposite conclusion? Why do you feel like you have access to these emotions and there's so many other people that just don't feel this way?
Well, I can't judge anyone for what their passion in life is. I have a lot of friends who hunt, and that's their passion and that's their prerogative. And I'm not against hunting. If you're hunting for food and that kind of stuff, I don't believe in just killing and that. But I do believe that if those people were to come and watch wolves in the same scenarios that I've got to watch them, I've gone out early in the morning, me and a few friends, my kids, and sat out in an area, complete fog. You knew the wolves were there. You can hear them, every once in a while they might do something. You can see them in the fog, whatever. The fog starts lifting. You can watch those animals play together and do what they do as a family. And I can guarantee, and it's happened. I've had friends who come who hate wolves, and then they've gone out and had a different opinion about them after watching them the way that I do. I know that not every wolf is, like that they're free and carefree, but I think, they are, but what I'm trying to say is that there are issues with some wolves. I understand that some wolves go after cattle and there are issues. And so, yes, if there's an issue that they have to be taken care of, that's fine and dandy. But I have a saying that I always say, and that's, you can't condemn an entire species for the acts of a few. And, you can't go wipe out wolves because there's a few that might do something wrong. If there's some doing something wrong and they have to be taken care of, that's fine. But yeah, it's a hard subject, but I can guarantee that I have changed many people's outlook on wolves by having them come and watch them with me and talking about them and telling them about them and, what they're doing when they're interacting and how they're acting. And my husband, for one, he was never a wolf lover. He never, he was a big hunter, and he can tell you, he could sit here today and tell you that he loves wolves and that he was wrong about them. And everything that he was taught about them growing up as a hunter was totally incorrect. You have to watch them out there when they're trying to survive. And yes, they take elk down, they take deer down. That's what they do. They have to live, they have to eat. But so do we. I
Yeah.
look at it and it's like we do the same thing as the human race. We do the same thing, and people are out there, and so I don't know. You have people that either love wolves and you have people that hate them, and there's a fine line there, and usually they want to save them or they want to kill them. And so the way I look at it is, if by any of my posts, if I could change the way one person thinks about a wolf, or if I could touch someone with something that I post about a wolf, just one person, I don't have to have 100 people in a day see a post or anything like that. But if there's one person and I could change their mind about what they think about a wolf, or what the way they look at them or the way they perceive them, that's a milestone. It's a huge thing. And like I say, people have their opinions and that kind of stuff, but I don't know. Maybe they just need to open their heart up a little bit more. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. This brings up my second question, what you were just talking about there, which it's kind of a strange question, I'll admit, but it came up while you were talking. Maybe I've asked like versions of this question in different contexts, but in this particular one, with Yellowstone being this truly unique place where any person from any walk of life, people that can't even get out into the woods and hike a mountain, they can still get to Yellowstone and have an experience. And that's really hard to find anywhere in the world. But as a photographer, how would your methods and your approach to wildlife photography change? So many photographers, their legacy is really attached to Yellowstone. It makes me wonder if say the unimaginable happened and Yellowstone, for some odd reason, wouldn't allow photographers into the park anymore. How would your approach to capturing these types of images have to change?
Well, that's a tough one. Do you mean like as far as still visiting the park and that kind of stuff, or?
No, I mean, like, this is your passion. This is the thing that you love. If Yellowstone wasn't there, how would you continue to, maybe how would your life be different in terms of being a wildlife photographer?
Well, I would definitely have to dig a lot deeper and go into places that are unknown. I think, I'm I'm always up for an adventure. I like to do things. Um, I like to go places where there's not a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely go out and explore areas that still create magic. There's a magic out there, and there's even, it's not just Yellowstone. It's, anywhere that wild animals are, whether, it's Canada, wherever it might be. There's such a connection for me to explore and learn. And when I say learn, I still learn things every day when I'm out there. I learn, new things all the time, just from hiking or watching a different animal, a different species, something. So I just think, if that's your passion and that's what you love, you'll find whatever it is and wherever that road takes you to go out and do what you love. Because I there's no way I could not take pictures. I sitting at home for a day without getting my camera out and taking a picture. It kills me. I'll go out and find a bird to take a picture of, or just something here in my yard, So I would definitely go to the unknown places and go, like here in Utah, I'd have to go deeper in because there's not a lot of animals that come out to the road, or there's not, those kind of things. I don't know. You just have to try and find where it is that your heart takes you, I guess.
It's amazing how many people that it touches in different ways every single year, every single day. It's just it's a constant energetic pull, which is incredible for a place like that to be able to do. You said something a little ways back that I want to ask you also, because you you have this connection, like Stephen, just like you were saying, and that Stephen touched on, with the wolf and with your photography. Did you ever find yourself seeing parallels between the wolves and the way that they're acting with their with their pack, and the relationship you and your father had, you and your family now have? Did any of those parallels ever cross your mind when you're sitting and watching or taking photos, or when you look back on it, or even, in the present moment?
Every single day, every time I watch them, it is, wolves and humans are so much alike. And I think that's what drew me in, and honestly what draws the world in, to be able to watch wolf pups play together. And that brings me back to my daughter Josie, and telling her about him, and the first time she ever saw him, and watching those wolves play together and listening to her giggle, just watching them reminded me so much of her playing with her siblings and laughing. And it's all connected. It is. And I think that, I don't know why I get so passionate when I talk about wolves, and why it honestly brings tears to my eyes just thinking about them. If someone asked me, I was talking to a friend last night, and what if someone says, what does wolf mean to you? And my response was family. That's the first thing I think about, because they are honestly a family. No one will ever change that for me. They are a family. They look out for each other. They communicate, they interact, they play, they, they have rules, they have boundaries with each other. They're truly amazing. And, my Rick gave me a Rick McIntyre. He's been my biggest inspiration where wolves are concerned. He's always answered any question that I've ever had for him. I've been lucky enough, to have him, I'll say, as a mentor, but also as a friend. He's a very good friend to me, and he's answered anything that I've ever asked. And he gave me a quote from my book, and I don't know his exact words, but it was something, that wolves are most like humans out of any other species out there. And it is honestly the truest thing, for anyone to ever say. And I never would have believed that. And going out and watching them, and, they have babysitters, just like us. Your oldest child will babysit your youngest child, or whatever, the yearlings babysit the pups. And it's, when one of them is lost, they truly mourn for them. I mean, I remember when 926 was killed a few years ago, and I have friends who live in Silvergate and that area, and for the first few nights after she had been killed, the rest of the pack would come in and just howl and howl for the longest time, hoping for her to answer back. And they have emotions. And it's funny, my book is dedicated to wolves because they're sentient beings, and they're, it's, I don't know, it's pretty incredible, the relationship that we have with our families and they have with their families. They truly are a family. It's 100%.
I want to touch on that too, and you segued beautifully into this, because I want to talk about the preservation and the activism that you do on this. It's a small scale, but it's not. And I love what you said earlier about you just posting your photos and hoping that it reaches that one individual or two individuals, and it's not a large scale act. And a lot of small scale things will end up being, growing into a larger activist arena. So just describe, like, what is your, as you move forward and as you keep posting your work, what is your aim when you're in the park? Are you talking to individuals on the side of the road? Are you giving talks? Are you talking to people about photos? What is your, and of course, talk about your new book. I know it's coming out next year in April. By the way, it's called Wolves Western Warriors. I think you guys can, I think if you go on Amazon, you can pre-order it, but Julie can tell you. But just what's the aim going forward for you in that arena?
The aim for me right now, currently, is obviously with the wolf hunt that is going on, not only in Montana, but Montana's laws were the most recently changed, but obviously Idaho and the surrounding areas. But with Montana, it's key right now for people to realize that this hunt is going on and that their laws have changed recently, and that they are allowing wolves to be killed in some pretty scary ways, and that someone could wipe out an entire pack if that pack crossed the border. They're allowing them to be baited, their snares, all of that kind of stuff, which to me is totally unethical. I have there's a lot of hunters in Montana who totally are against what's happening there and the way that they're allowing that to happen. So education on that kind of stuff right now in this time is what's the most important to me. I ran into some people in the park, well, not just some people, but every day, and we'll talk to them and educate them and tell them about wolves, and then someone brings up, well, what about the hunting and this and that? And most of them don't realize that right there on the border of the park, they can be hunted and killed like they are. And so for them, it's a very big eye opener to learn that, these animals that we fought so hard to bring back and that are doing so well are just being killed. And what they don't realize is, wolves regulate their own numbers. They do. They, in Yellowstone, 100 wolves, say, a few years there's some that's less than 100. A few years you have some that's over 100, but they haven't skyrocketed up to like 500 wolves like everyone thought they would. They were going to take over everything. And I realized that they're, outside the park, but it's important people know what's happening outside the park. So for me right now, like I say, education on that. But going forward, educating people every single day about wolves is something that I do. They, like I say, they're the main draw for so many people, and not only in Yellowstone, just everywhere. People want to learn about wolves, and so talking about them, teaching people every single day, like I say, I mean, I'm out first thing in the morning and I'm out till the last light in the sky. And my mom, she'd always say, if you go to the park with Julie, you plan on spending the whole day, because it's a job for her. She's not getting paid for it. She's not anything else, but she's out there educating people because it's what matters. It's what's important. And people need to see that family orientation, that, what they truly are. And if we're ever to have them survive and actually be here longer than, what they might be, if all of this is still going on 5 years from now, there's not going to be very many wolves. And if you're not out there educating people on a daily basis, and yeah, there's a lot of us out there that try and educate and do that kind of stuff. And if we're not doing it, then they're really going to be in trouble, because people aren't going to know just how special they are.
When you're with you coming from an ethical hunting family and having individuals around you that are ethical hunters, because you said it briefly before that a lot of them believe that it's literally overkill. Is that a general thought from a lot of the people that you speak to in and around your family, friends of yours that are hunters? What is their feeling on it, and why do they feel the way that they do, one way or the other?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I have several friends who hate wolves. They hate everything about wolves. They, I can't even talk to them about it sometimes because it ends up turning pretty ugly. Um, they, however, have not been out and actually experienced wolves in the way that I have. I understand that they've probably, seen wolves take down elk or whatever else, but they haven't experienced wolves in the same way that I have. So for myself, I'm honestly thankful for those people, because if it hadn't been for them pushing me to go out on my own and explore, and maybe me wanting to prove them wrong, on what they were saying, drove me a little bit to figure out what I've learned about wolves. If it wasn't for those people believing the old wives' tales, I don't think that the people that are out there fighting for wolves right now would have as much passion that they have to try and change the minds of those people out there. So I think you have to have that diversity sometimes, because if you didn't, we would just keep following along the ways of how it's always been. I, yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. And like I say, we've gotten some heated arguments, and, finally it's, you ask him to leave or you whatever, but I'm honestly thankful, because I never would have went and done what I've done and not taught myself, but learned from actually being out there and watching them at just how they truly are.
Yeah, it's this
Yeah.
discussion that Stephen and I continue to bring up, and we continue to try and find what we've been calling the radical middle. And it's really such a, like you say, there are debates that are heated, and hopefully we get to the point, or we're getting to that point, where we have ethical, moderated discussions where people from both sides can share their points of view, where we can have this mutual understanding of where everyone's coming from, and then hopefully try to figure out a solution to this issue that has truly been in wolves and humans crosshairs really for hundreds of years. I just got finished reading a book by John T. Coleman called Vicious: Wolves and Men in America or North America. And it really shows the separation of when we first settled this country, or when Europeans first settled this country, how divisive it was and how vicious we were, and how that was able to be flipped the other direction. So I do believe that there is a place for these discussions, and there is a place to find that middle ground where we can have everyone try to coexist, because I believe what you're saying. We need to get people there. I think getting people to that point is the toughest part. But once we get people there, we can actually have these discussions and make policies and make things work for everyone, and for the wolves and for bears and for all these other species that are in the crosshairs right now.
Right. Carter Niemeyer is one of my favorite. I don't know if you've ever spoken with him. Yeah, he's just, some of the things he says, he's one of my favorite to listen to, because, he worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and he gets both sides of it. And I don't think there's very many people that actually understand, both sides of the wolf, both sides of, yeah, there's people that hate him. I understand it. There's people that hate him. There's people that love him. There has to be middle ground somewhere. You can't want to kill them all just because you hate them, just because of what's been said in the past. You can't, it's just not something you can do. I don't understand, just like those, there was a couple of pups from one of the packs in the park that were recently killed, right when that hunt started over in Montana. And I just don't understand how anyone could watch, a 6-month-old wolf pup come out playing with its sibling and just shoot it to shoot it. There has to be something there that somewhere that says that can't happen. It's just not right. It's not right.
Yeah. It's,
I don't know. I
yeah.
understand. Like I say, I understand the hate and I understand the passion on their side, but I don't understand how you can just kill something that's doing nothing wrong. Just because they've been made out to be the so-called big bad wolf, that's not what they are. And they shouldn't be killed just because of that.
Yeah. I think we both agree on that. We have to shed a lot of the old baggage, I think, that humans carry from times of long ago, from centuries before, that really aren't, based in fact or based in logic, and that are really based in the fear and the emotion that was brought here, that wasn't here before then. And so I think it's still a work in progress, and we as a species, humans I speak of now, that more so than ever, we have the tools to be able to see the facts and see these things in front of us, and yet still we go back to these primal emotional situations that drive our decision making, as opposed to be really sitting at the top and being able to decipher what is good and what is not good enough for the environment that surrounds us. And it's why we have these discussions. It's why we talk to individuals like yourself, and we talk to the Carter Niemeyers of the world to try and get to the bottom of, we have this deep human connection to this species. And I keep reiterating it, but I feel like it keeps needing to be said. This is not something I see with orcas or with dolphins or with eagles or with bison. I mean, you have people that are like that, but this is the species that, for whatever the reason, well, for the reasons of the fact of coevolution, and with the fact that we have had these myths and legends, they are at the forefront of our brain and the forefront of our biologic and evolutionary development. And so they have been here through it all. And it's something we have to get back to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I feel like it is worth mentioning, though, because we do want to, we want to honor the fact that there are so many ethical hunters out there. I mean, I think Montana's got 250,000 licensed hunters in the state. And I mean, 36 wolves have been killed since October. So it means it just shows how many folks honor the hunting tradition, but are not just out for bloodlust in terms of wolves. So I think there's a lot of people that have problems with wolves, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're out trying to hunt them. So it's you know what I mean? So I think it's important to mention that too, how many registered hunters are in these states and how few of them are actually taking part in what I would consider a fringe group activity. I mean, killing a wolf puppy, I mean, I don't even know what would have to happen to me for me to even consider that. But there are so many good hunters out there not doing those types of things and who really would never. So I think those are,
I agree.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's worth mentioning.
I do. That's why I was earlier when I mentioned, I can't judge anyone for their passion.
Right.
That's their passion and they love it. And so I understand people having a passion to hunt. I 100% understand that. I grew up in that. It didn't make me love my dad any less because he hunted.
Right,
I get it. That's it's people's passion, and I totally understand it, and I totally respect them if that's what they choose, as long as they're doing it ethically, like you say, and doing it what they love and because they love it and that kind of stuff. And so I agree, it's important. I'm glad you brought that point up.
Yeah, and I think it'd be so rare. I don't know. It is hard these days, because in this social media just makes us aware of everything. And like when I see that someone went into a den and killed a wolf puppy, like my heart just breaks because, I have relationships with physical wolves, and I have a hard time not putting them in that position, and I'm like, man, that's terrible. But I also live in a state where I know dozens of hunters who honestly, it would never cross their minds. So it's important, it's just important for us to mention that people are generally good, but there's some fringe group activities that we just absolutely could do without. And
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
I posted a video a little while ago. It was from earlier this year. And I was watching these wolves through my spotting scope, probably around 500 to 600 yards. And I was there with a couple of friends, and we're watching, and we saw some hikers out. And I don't know if either one of you have seen this video. It's not on my Instagram, it's on my Facebook page. But two hikers go out, and they're off trail, and they're walking out, and they're getting closer to the wolves, where the wolves are. And we kept seeing wolves in and out of the trees. One was laying down on this little hill, and
yeah,
they kept getting closer and closer. Well, the two are talking, and they have no clue that these wolves are even there. They're not. They get closer. They get within, it was
Right.
like 20 to 30 yards away from the wolves. And the wolf laying there just stands up and jumps and runs in the trees. They have no idea the whole time. There's 6 wolves that ended up being right there. They had no idea about it. So they continue on their hike. About an hour and a half goes by. They come around. They end up getting back on the trail and coming over to where we are. And I asked him, and I wish I would have filmed this, because this was the part I should have filmed. It was the funniest reaction ever. I said, so did you guys see any animals while you were out there? And they said, no, we didn't see anything. We just, ended up going over to the geyser area right there and was watching the geysers. And I'm like, so you really didn't see any animals? And they're like, no, why? Well, I said, let me show you this. So I, take my phone off my scope, and I show them the video, and they just about died. They're like, no way, they were right there in front of us, and da-da-da, but it's funny. My point of this is, wolves are so misunderstood, and people going and killing them, like you said, in pups and in their den and that kind of stuff. But honestly, wolves don't go after people most of the time. There might be a few times that things happen, and the wolves that I'm used to seeing, other areas of the world might be different. But
sure.
When I posted that video, and this, you touched on social media, which is what brought that to mind. So many people out there said that I staged it, that I had these people go and walk out there, that I set the whole thing up. And, and it's funny because people literally are scared of wolves. They, their perception of them from times past and that kind of stuff is just totally different than how they really are. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, all these points are so important. And Stephen, thank you for bringing that up. I know we try to touch on that as much as possible. And
who knows? The season the season's not over yet, so I may be eating my words. But in my experience, most people are good people, no matter what they're interested in.
Yeah, of course they are. And I agree with you. And it's, again, we are here to point out that the ethical hunters out there that are the ones that are speaking up about this and joining causes to curb these policies the way that they are. And to your story, Julie, we've had individuals come here to Wolf Connection where they're visiting and they're afraid of large canines. They're afraid of large dogs and they're afraid of wolves. And it's interesting that you would come here knowing that you have that fear. And then we've had people that we've say, okay, you don't have to, sometimes we go in the enclosures, sometimes we go up to the fence, and we say, you don't have to do anything that you're not comfortable with. It's the same thing we do with the wolves here. We don't make them do anything they're uncomfortable with. And it's amazing to see how they navigate that. And there are people that will go in the enclosure. They will deal with going up to the fence, and it's almost like as though they're trying to push through that anxiety or maybe that fear, whatever it is, and it ends up changing again their perception of the fear that they had. Maybe not hatred, but just fear in general. So it's like you say, all these things are relative in the experiences that you've had and the experiences that you've shared through this entire podcast about how people can change and how people are able to see things in a different light.
For sure. I always say, and in my book, I say wolves they're the most misunderstood species of their time. And I truly believe that. They're so misunderstood. They, like you say, it dates back to years and years and years ago of what people thought about them. And I think hopefully that the world is changing that, and they can just be seen in a new light. You'll always have the other side, but for the most part, hopefully we can change some people's mind or something.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we're all here to do. Before I let you go, Julie, please tell everybody where they can see your beautiful, wonderful photos on Instagram. I know you have a website also, and give everyone information on your book, when it's coming out, and where they can find it.
Okay, so my Instagram and my Facebook pages, they're both called Wild Love Images. And my website is actually currently under construction. So I don't have a website at the moment, but redoing it. There's stuff under Fine Art America, but I don't generally tell people to go there anymore because it doesn't have my current stuff on there. My book is called Wolves, Western Warriors. For the title, the warrior part was very important to me because I truly feel they are warriors. They're survivors. They have come up against so much in their lifetime that they fought through it. And it meant a lot to me for that title to be on there. It is available Amazon Books pre-order right now. It comes out in April, and then you should be able to get it at any bookstore anywhere. It's pretty exciting for me. I had the opportunity. I was contacted by someone who wanted to use my information, stories, and my photos, that kind of stuff. So it's been a really great thing for me. I just did a grizzly bear one, and now the wolf one is coming out, and I'm pretty humbled by it. It's, for someone to want to just use my stuff from seeing my stuff off Instagram it's pretty incredible. Yeah. So, yeah.
Instagram's full of good stuff.
Stephen, I think, has been scrolling through it. I mean, congratulations to you. Congratulations on the photos and the book coming out. Trust me, I'll definitely grab a copy once it's there. My final question to you, and I know you answered it before, but I want to see if it's different. When you hear the word wolf, Julie, what comes to your mind?
I'm going to say inspiration. They have a way of touching your soul, and they bring out emotions in people that I don't think any other animal does. And that's an important thing.
I love it. Julie Argyle, it's so lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming on and sharing all your stories. The stories are fantastic. The photos are even better. We will have all of her handles and where you guys can find her photos, and I will post a link so you guys can check out the pre-order for the book. Trust me, I'm sure it's going to be something you're going to want to have on your shelf if you're a wolf person. Julie Argyle, thank you so much for coming on with Steve and myself. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime.
You got it. How's to all of you out there, and Steve and I will be with you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Looking to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the donate tab, and find out more information.